John is what I would describe is there's human beings that have different temperament and different minds and different mentality and a ruthless competitive drive that's almost terrifying to the ordinary person. That's Jon Jones. Jon Jones is a bad guy who's trying to be a good guy.
Since the fight will never happen, gun to my head, I would have said Jon Jones will beat him right now. Tom has never been pushed into those championship rounds. That first time you feel that, I gotta get up off that stool after the third round. You needed to fight Tom now when he doesn't have that experience, especially as Jon Jones.
Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall have finally crossed paths, not in the octagon and not on a blockbuster fight night, but through sharp words and a hint of serious intent. In a surprising turn of events that no one saw coming earlier this year, Jones has now suggested the possibility of taking on Aspinall at none other than the White House. In a headline-grabbing move, US President Donald Trump has revealed his intention to host a UFC event right on the White House lawn. The announcement was quickly endorsed by UFC President Dana White, instantly turning a wild concept into something that feels oddly possible. With this unexpected opportunity on the table, top UFC fighters are now jostling for a chance to be featured. Surprisingly, Jon Jones, recently retired and inactive, has hinted at making a comeback if it means stepping into the cage under such extraordinary conditions.
Against Jon Jones. I'll be honest, Tom's a friend. I love Tom. He's one of the coolest dudes in the whole of MMA. Even though Jones is getting old, I just can't pick against Jon Jones. I've been watching Jon Jones, as I say, since 2000.
That one moment alone sent shockwaves through the MMA world. Jon Jones, who had stepped away from the sport after a legendary run filled with title defenses and dominance across 2 divisions, seemed firmly retired. But in MMA, nothing is ever truly final, especially not retirements. When a fan posted an AI-generated image of Jones facing off with Tom Aspinall on the White House lawn, Jones didn't scroll past. He noticed. He responded. And with just 3 words, "I like it," he reignited a potential rivalry that had gone quiet since his exit from competition that it wasn't a fight contract. It wasn't even a promise. But in the universe of Jon Jones, comebacks don't start with announcements. They start with hints, whispers, and subtle signals just like this.
He's like the longest running heavyweight champion in the history of the UFC, isn't he? But he's only like he hasn't fought anyone. I don't think it's going to happen, you know. I think Jon gets a lot of money for being champion. I think the sponsors and that are paying him a fortune, and I think he's just dragging along, keeping the belt as long as possible because it's worth that much money to him. I mean, Jon's often struggled with tall people who are good boxers. I imagine he probably, if he did fight him, he would.
The possibility of Jon Jones finally facing Tom Aspinall suddenly feels more real than ever. For a long time, Jones dismissed the matchup entirely. While Aspinall kept calling for it, fans rallied behind the idea, and Dana White carefully tiptoed around it. But Jones simply wasn't biting. He had the upper hand: the belt, the legacy, and the negotiating power. And he made one thing clear: he'd only step in for a massive payday. Behind the scenes, talk circulated that Jones was demanding at least $20 million, maybe more depending on the deal. When those talks went nowhere, Jones walked. Aspinall kept pushing forward, picked up another win, and refused to wait around. As usual, the UFC didn't hit pause. It kept rolling. Aspinall was elevated to undisputed champion, and the heavyweight division continued on without Jon Jones.
And say, no, you're not going to take this. And do you know what Jon Jones did? You have it. I don't want to fight. You can have it. This is unbelievable. The greatest of all time. What a load of shit. I'm sorry. Never going to call that him the GOAT. Ever again. Because being the greatest of all time is not just about winning. And that's what Jon Jones doesn't understand. It's about how you conduct yourself throughout the whole of your career. Are you willing to fight the biggest challenges, the biggest tests, go in there and test yourself?
But Jones never fully stepped away. There were signs, quiet ones, that a return might be on the horizon. Subtle re-entries into the USADA testing pool. Cryptic posts hinting at unfinished business. And now, this unexpected interest in the potential White House event. Sure, the idea of fighting on the White House lawn sounds theatrical, even surreal. But the stakes are no joke. If the UFC actually pulls it off, no matchup would carry more symbolic weight than Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall. It would be the ultimate clash, the last iconic champion taking on the division's new ruler. A fight that once seemed lost in the shuffle could suddenly become the main event of what might be the most unusual and politically charged card in UFC history.
If you're a sprinter and you take PEDs, you become faster than people who are not taking PEDs and you win a race. That's okay. You're a cheat, you've won, they'll take your title off you or whatever. That's fine. If your job is to hurt another person, physically hurt another person, which could potentially redirect the rest of their life post-fighting, you're an absolute piece of shit and you should never be able to fight again if you have any PEDs.
This time, Jon Jones wouldn't be entering the octagon as the reigning king. That title now belongs to Tom Aspinall, not only through his dominant performances, but officially granted by the UFC. And that shift flips the entire storyline. What was once about Aspinall chasing greatness is now about Jones stepping into unfamiliar territory as a challenger. The roles have reversed, and with that, so has the power dynamic.
UFC White House is crazy, dude. How's that even a thing? Is that allowed? Like, how is Donald even allowed to do that? Be kind of gangster, though. Chandler versus McGregor. Be kind of gangster. Aspinall. Jon Jones wants to fight on it. Classic. Back in the testing pool after 2 weeks. Bro is a troll and a half. He's not having his title back. That just can't be happening. Ulberg Roundtree would be sick.
That twist alone adds a fascinating layer. Jones has never entered a fight without the upper hand, without the belt, the aura of control, or the psychological edge. His entire legacy was built on dominance now. Coming out of retirement to face a younger, surging threat like Aspinall, without championship status, would be the ultimate test of pride and legacy. And maybe that's exactly why he'd do it. Jones has always thrived on reminding the world who he is, especially when people start to doubt or move on.
I'll just come out and ask you, do you think he's ducking Tom Aspinall?
No. Jon Jones, I said it a million times, I'll say it again. He's never ducked anybody other than that one goofy time with the Chael Sonnen thing. He's never ducked anybody. And, I think the reality is whatever changed his mind with this fight, I don't know, you'd have to ask him that. But, he's 38 years old and I don't know.
Do you think if it was someone like Alex Pereira, he would fight them? And it's maybe Tom that he specifically doesn't fancy them?
What adds another layer of complexity is the possibility that Tom Aspinall may no longer be interested in the fight. The British champion has plenty of options. Cyril Gane appears to be the front runner for his next title defense, and there's no shortage of contenders ready to step up. Without the baggage that comes with a Jon Jones showdown, Aspinall seems focused on carving out his own path, defending his belt, and establishing a new legacy at heavyweight. And if he believes Jones is only circling back now because the spotlight has shifted, he might just shut that door for good. More and more, it looks like Aspinall isn't willing to sit around and wait for Jones to make a decision, especially with lingering questions about the payday and timing.
I would even say this, and I don't know if this is controversial or not, but I would say that Jon Jones ducked Tom Aspinall so hard that he went through self-destructive measures just to avoid a fight with this man. That's how good Tom Aspinall is. And everyone you're going to list off is going to get beat.
Well, we'll see.
And yet, the sheer magnitude of a potential Jones versus Aspinall clash continues to capture the imagination of the MMA world. Even Daniel Cormier, one of Jones's most outspoken rivals, has weighed in. Surprisingly, Cormier believes Jones would come out on top, not in theory, but right now. There were no caveats, no hesitation. If he had to place a bet, Cormier said, it would be on Jon Jones.
But what did you make of it when you heard Jon calling out Alex of all people?
I think he does do this because, Alex Perez now he's like big star in the UFC, everybody loves him, so he know what he's doing, but I believe he should to fight against Aspinall, but I think he a little bit afraid of him, because Aspinall is someone who can really stop him and beat him.
Yeah,
that's what I think that he believes if he can, fight against.
Cormier's reasoning was simple. While Aspinall has the size, speed, and striking to be a real threat, he's yet to be tested in the championship rounds, where fatigue, pressure, and endurance become the real battle. Jon Jones, by contrast, has spent over a decade thriving in those deep waters. He's built a legacy by outlasting legends in grueling 5-round wars. For Cormier, that level of experience, especially when the fight drags into those final minutes where grit and composure are everything, is what gives Jones the edge.
Think of the star Aspinall would have been if we just would have got that fight over with right away. Think of the star Ngannou still would have been for this company if you just would have had that fight and moved it on. And then you have an epic rivalry between those two, Aspinall and Ngannou. Like the years and years of amazing heavyweight fights could have been happening if John Jones just wasn't a petulant child, and if the UFC wasn't just the, oh no, it's fine, he's just finding himself, just so annoying and so...
Cormier's opinion may not shift the odds in Vegas, but it echoes the larger conversation happening across the MMA world. The truth is, no one really knows just how good Tom Aspinall is yet. He's been dominant, sure, but he hasn't faced someone like John Jones, a fighter who doesn't break under pressure, who adapts mid-fight, and who thrives in chaos. If this fight ever gets signed, the questions would come fast and furious. Can Aspinall handle the mental chess match? Can he stuff the takedowns, counter the kicks, and stay clear of the traps that Jones is known for setting up so subtly? And if the fight drags into those deep championship rounds, the ones where every move counts and fatigue plays judgment, can he keep up? Then there's the biggest unknown. What version of John Jones would even show up? He's been out of the cage, semi-retired, and only occasionally visible in the spotlight. That alone makes the potential showdown even more unpredictable.
Is there a fighter in MMA or the UFC that you just find absolutely insufferable? Because for me, it's John Jones, and there is no close second. John Jones defended his heavyweight title against a retired 42-year-old Stipe Miocic back in November. Ever since then, John has been saying, what has Tom Aspinall done to deserve to fight me? You know, besides Tom being the interim champ and having a defense with that belt, John has just found every possible way to not fight.
But at the end of the day, he's still John Jones. Even when he's not at his best, he finds a way to win. He dismantles Cyril Gane with ease, barely breaking a sweat. He's outsmarted fighters with longer win streaks, bigger bodies, and more momentum. If Jones is truly thinking about a return, it's hard to imagine he'd do it without a full training camp and proper preparation. And if he gets that, betting against him becomes a tough call. This whole situation, unpredictable as it is, highlights something we've seen time and again. John Jones has never fully walked away. The game has always had a hold on him, and maybe it always will.
I'm going to retire John Jones without even fighting him. He said that nearly a year ago today. Tom Aspinall said those words. And never have words aged better in the MMA world than Tom Aspinall saying that.
Their first face-to-face moment actually took place months before anyone imagined a UFC event at the White House. It happened quietly, but powerfully, at the Arnold Sports Festival in Birmingham, England. The atmosphere shifted when the two champions unexpectedly stood just feet apart, surrounded by stunned fans and flashing cameras who realized they were witnessing something special. John Jones had been casually taking photos with attendees when Tom Aspinall made his move. No entourage, no theatrics, just confidence. He walked straight up to Jones, rested a hand on his shoulder, and asked with quiet intensity, "Are we doing this or what?"